Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Quarantine Collections. We're beginning a brand new week here at the Old Baldy Foundation of virtual programming, bringing you some history and a little bit of Bald Head Island as we're all self-isolating during this pandemic. On behalf of the entire Old Baldy Foundation staff and directors, we sincerely hope that you and your family are safe, that you're healthy, and that you're doing what you can to flatten this curve and support all of our medical and first responders who are really on the front lines of this pandemic. So today is my Monday. Tuesdays are my Monday, and I thought, what a better topic to get excited about to be starting a brand new week of these videos other than the American Revolution. And one of my favorite pieces in all of our collections, and that is a button from a British soldier's uniform that was found here at the Old Baldy Foundation in an archaeological excavation that occurred on the lighthouse grounds in the mid-1980s. And this is the object that they found during that archaeological dig that makes me the most excited. I think that out of all the pieces in our collections, this is my favorite. And don't worry, I have thoroughly washed these hands to make sure that we're not harming that beautiful button from a British soldier's uniform. So you might wonder, how did a British officer lose a button on Bald Head Island? What were the British doing here on Bald Head Island during the American Revolution? What may surprise you, that most likely that button was lost on Bald Head Island even before we signed the Declaration of Independence. That's how early the British invaded this area of North Carolina during the American Revolution. And this story actually begins a full year before we signed the Declaration of Independence. Good morning, Chris. Yeah, that reminds me, folks, if you're listening out there, I see Phil is listening. Good morning, Phil. We miss you. I hope that you are safe and healthy over there in Southport, or should I call it Smithville this morning. If you're listening out there, folks, we have quite a few listeners. Give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know where you're listening from. Let us know your connection to Bald Head Island. Hey, good morning, Karen. It's good to see you on this Tuesday morning. Let us know your connection to Bald Head Island. And if you have any questions, button, who's got the button? If you have any questions, drop in those comments there and we'll get an answer for you. So yes, this story of how a British officer dropped a button on Bald Head Island during the American Revolution begins a full year before we signed the Declaration of Independence. In the summer of 1775, North Carolina's royal governor was Josiah Martin. And the capital of this colony was in New Bern, North Carolina. It's about 2 hours north of Wilmington, or Bald Head Island, along the coast. Roughly along the coast, along the inland sounds of North Carolina. Well, there was quite a stir in that town. There were patriots, or they would have called them Whigs. The Whigs is a political party during the American Revolution, just like we have Democrats or Republicans today. The Whigs were the political party that was fermenting or stirring up this rebellious spirit here in the colony of North Carolina and its sister colonies up and down the coast. They were causing such a stir, the royal governor, Martin, started to fear for his life and fear for his safety in the colonial capital. So in the summer of 1775, Josiah Martin flees the capital in New Bern, and he seeks the safety of a British warship that is anchored just off the coast of Bald Head Island in the mouth of the Cape Fear River. The warship was called the Cruiser, And he arrives in the cruiser in the midsummer of 1775. And from that British warship, Josiah Martin feels pretty safe. Well, that only sparks or increases the rebellious spirit of these patriots or these Whigs. And in fact, within eyesight of Governor Martin, aboard that British warship called the cruiser, the patriots burn one of the only forts in the entire colony of North Carolina. It's called Fort Johnston. Today it is in downtown Southport, but when it's burned by the Patriot troops in July of 1775, there is no Southport. There is even no Smithville, which is the first name of Southport. There's just a fort there. And it is the only fort the British have nominal control of. And within eyesight of Governor Martin, aboard that warship, the Patriots burned that fort to the ground. And there is nothing that the British royal governor can do but sit there and watch his authority crumble in this rebellious colony of North Carolina. So what does Governor Martin do? Well, he begins writing London. He is asking for help across the Atlantic Ocean in the mother country. He is asking for some sort of British army and British naval force to arrive here in the Cape Fear area and quell this rebellious spirit to once and for all have an armed resistance against these Whigs or against these patriots that are stirring up so much trouble between Wilmington and Brunswick Town on the Cape Fear River and New Bern up on the Sounds. Well, it takes several months for him to get an answer, and eventually London writes back and says, we are going to send 2 fleets to the Cape Fear River. One fleet is going to leave Boston, and it is under the command of Sir Clinton. He's a general in the British Army. And another fleet aboard with several thousand British soldiers is going to leave from Ireland, and it's going to be under the command of Charles Cornwallis, another British general. So this fleet from Boston and this fleet from Ireland are going to rendezvous or meet up here in the mouth of the Cape Fear River. They're going to rescue Governor Martin aboard the cruiser, bobbing away for months at a time in the mouth of the Cape Fear. And together, these 2 armies are going to launch an invasion of North Carolina and quell this rebellious spirit in this colony. But they need some help. And it is up to Governor Martin to ferment or to raise this help within the colony. And if you were following along, I think it was, we've done so many of these videos, I'm not sure if it was past week or the week before, we told you the story of Flora McDonald. And that is where this community on Bald Head Island named Flora's Bluff gets its name. Well, Flora McDonald's husband and several other her family members were the help, were the assistance that the British were relying upon. Governor Martin's role was to raise an army of loyalists within North Carolina. Loyalists are these North Carolinians that decide to remain loyal to the King of England during the American Revolution. That's right, folks. We think of the American Revolution nowadays as everybody in the colonies was just supporting the Patriots or the Whigs. That everybody was on the same page. We were going to rebel against the king. We were going to declare our independence. Everybody's going to be happy and hunky-dory. Well, that's not quite how it works. Historians debate how many loyalists were in the American colonies. There has always been this kind of feeling that Southerners tended to be more loyal to the King of England than Northerners. Most of you are aware, think the Boston Tea Party and Lexington and Concord, those battles or those early events during the American Revolution begin up there in Boston. So it's always this kind of feeling that the New Englanders are the ones that are stirring up trouble, and the Southerners are, staying loyal, we'll call it that way. Well, here in North Carolina, the most loyal colonists end up being these Highland Scots that settled the upper Cape Fear River Valley around what we call Fayetteville, North Carolina today, but they call Cross Creek. They are the McDonalds, Flora's husband. They are the ones that initiate communication with Governor Martin aboard the cruiser off the coast of Bald Head Island. And they say, we are going to collect an army of loyalists in Cross Creek. We are going to march down the Cape Fear River, meet up with that British army arriving from Boston and the British army arriving from Ireland. And together, the Loyalist Army of Highland Scots, the British Army from Ireland under Charles Cornwallis, and the British Army under General Clinton from Boston. Those three groups are going to unite in the mouth of the Cape Fear River, launch this invasion of North Carolina, and quell this rebellion once and for all. Hey, good morning, Mackie. Good morning, Travis. I'm obeying our governor and watching as I stay at home. Yeah, folks, home is Bald Head Island for me right now, so we're doing as we can to obey our order. All of our other staff members, they're working from home. I have not been on the mainland for weeks now. We're, watching the order. Nobody else is here in the office. We're kind of all staying put. So remember, you can go out, you can get some exercise as long as you're not in groups. I encourage you to go out and get some fresh air. You can go to the grocery store. You can go support a local business as long as they're doing takeout. Stay safe and make responsible choices here in the next few weeks. Kathy, good morning, watching from Kentucky. It's good to see you, Kathy. Noni Williams, hey, good morning, Noni. I saw you the other day, I think I passed you. I think you're on Bald Head. Good morning. Hey, we already said good morning to Karen. So, hey, folks, if you're listening out there, give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know where you're listening from and what your connection to Bald Head Island is. If you have any questions about the Revolutionary War on Bald Head Island, leave them in those comments, even if you're listening into the future, and we'll get back to you. So, back to our story. Well, these three elements all face different problems. Donna, thank you, watching from Long Island. We miss BHI. Hey, Donna, I'm sure you do miss Bald Head Island. We're really hoping that y'all can get back here very soon. So these three elements, they all face very different problems in trying to find Governor Martin aboard the cruiser here in the mouth of the Cape Fear River. The first of those elements has the first problem. That's the Highland Scots that are organizing themselves 100 miles up the Cape Fear River from Bald Head Island. En route to Bald Head Island, they are met by Patriot troops and defeated at the Battle of Moores Creek on February 27th, 1776. The survivors of that battle are captured, such as Flora MacDonald's husband, Alan MacDonald, and they are marched to Halifax, North Carolina, and eventually to Philadelphia, North Carolina, as prisoners of war. So none of the Highland Scots, these loyalist troops, ever make it to the Cape Fear River. In March of 1776, the first of those two British armies arrive in the Cape Fear River. And that is the British army that is arriving from Boston under the command of General Clinton. And when General Clinton arrives here in the Cape Fear River, he immediately learns from Governor Martin that his loyalist friends are defeated at the Battle of Moores Creek, and nobody is coming to help him. He probably feels extremely alone in this wilderness that is the lower Cape Fear River in early 1776. So there is nothing for General Clinton to do other than wait for that second army of British soldiers arriving from Ireland. And that second army, their problem is all these nor'easters that we get in the Atlantic Ocean in the late winters. That British convoy, that armada, if you will, that is carrying these British troops across the Atlantic Ocean from Ireland is completely battered and scattered by several terrible nor'easters. And it takes them weeks. They are so behind schedule. They are a month or more behind schedule in finding and rendezvousing here in the mouth of the Cape Fear River. They don't arrive until late April, into May. It's May before all these various ships collect themselves in the lower Cape Fear River. And they too arrive to find the bad news delivered from Governor Martin and General Clinton that there is no loyalist army from upriver coming to help them. So now that there are several thousand British troops here in the spring of 1776 in the lower Cape Fear River, what is there to do? Well, they began pillaging several plantations along the lower Cape Fear. The lower Cape Fear River had several plantations owned by leading patriots or leading Whigs that were now generals of militias and continental troops. One of them, Robert Howe, his plantation was razed and burned to the ground. The port of Brunswick Town, the earliest semi-permanent settlement in the lower Cape Fear River, was burned to the ground. St. Philip's Church, which is an Anglican or now an Episcopal church, its ruins are today at Brunswick Town, Fort Anderson State Historic Site, since it was burned by the British troops. One of the largest houses in the lower Cape Fear, Russellborough, which was for a time the colonial capital, if you will. It was the home of at least two royal governors. It was burned to the ground by these British troops. So there are a lot of different kind of guerrilla warfare tactics that are being used to seek some revenge against the leading patriots while these British troops are waiting in the lower Cape Fear River for some sort of strategic plan to form out of the minds of Governor Martin and these two British generals. Now, eventually, there are British troops that are landed on Bald Head Island. You think, why would they land British troops on Bald Head Island? Well, can you imagine being stuck on a transport ship for several months at a time? Especially when some of these troops, like the 57th Regiment of Foot, had just crossed the Atlantic Ocean in the middle of several nor'easters. They were probably very, very seasick. These are infantrymen. They're used to fighting on land. They're probably seeking some vegetables or something. Now, there are probably no vegetables that are being grown naturally in these parts, but they're seeking to supplement their diet rather than what supplies were on ships. Eventually, they got to find water. Now, the Cape Fear River has become extremely brackish or inundated with salt water since they began dredging the channel deeper and deeper to accommodate ships trying to reach the port of Wilmington. So in 1776, the lower Cape Fear River was probably significantly less brackish as it is today, but it's still, especially during high tide, would have been inundated with salt water. So these British troops would have had to have landed somewhere to get fresh water. And Bald Head Island is sitting on a large freshwater aquifer. So it's highly likely that they may have landed on Bald Head Island in order to supplement their ration of fresh water. Well, we know at least some point the 57th Regiment of Foot is landed here on Bald Head Island off of those transports, and that is when some officer dropped this button to be recovered hundreds, over 100 years later by an archaeologist on the lighthouse grounds. When the British get here on Bald Head Island, sometime when this officer's dropping that button, they construct a small fort, a very, very small fort, probably made out of wood, not earthen like the Civil War fort. They name it Fort George, of course, named after the King of England. And that supplies them with a base, some protection in case the Patriots or the Continental troops in Wilmington and over on the mainland in Southport were to attack. Well, eventually Generals Clinton and Cornwallis, they decide that they are not going to invade North Carolina. In fact, that they are going to abandon this idea of launching this invasion to quell this rebellious spirit in North Carolina. They have given up since their loyalist friends that were supposed to meet them around Bald Head Island were defeated at the Battle of Moores Creek. And they decide that Charlestown, South Carolina is a better and easier target. So in early summer of 1776, about a month before we signed the Declaration of Independence, the British pack up everything and they get down and sail to Charlestown to try to capture one of the crown jewels of the British colonies in North Carolina. Now, not to ruin the story, but it doesn't go so well for the British down there either. And that's why we have Carolina Day in South Carolina. But that's a whole other story. I encourage you to visit Fort Moultrie, which is part of Fort Sumter National Monument or the National Park System down in Charleston. Phone ringing. Were there any British troops left here on Bald Head Island? Yes, there were a small contingent of British troops left here on Bald Head Island at that small fort called Fort George. And it is those British troops that are attacked in mid-September 1776. The Patriot troops around Wilmington and the Lower Cape Fear were very unnerved by this small contingent of British troops left on Bald Head Island. And it was the 4th North Carolina Continental Troops under the command of Colonel Thomas Polk that decide in September of 1776 to attack that British contingent left on Bald Head Island. It's like church bells when the phone rings here. Phone's upstairs and phone's downstairs. Makes me miss the church bells in downtown Wilmington, where I do call home when we're not in the middle of the pandemic. So Thomas Polk, he crosses the Lower Cape Fear River from Southport. He lands somewhere in the saltwater marsh to the north of Bald Head Island. They march across the maritime forest to attack Fort George from the east. And it doesn't go so well for the British troops. They're overwhelmed, it doesn't go so well for the Patriot troops. The 4th North Carolina Continental troops were overwhelmed by the British. The British are assisted by 2 warships that were left in the Lower Cape Fear. And the superior firepower aboard those British ships overwhelmed the Patriots. They have to abandon their raid on Bald Head Island. They're almost cut off in their line of retreat. Remember, they got to row back across the Cape Fear River to the mainland over in Southport, directly in the path of these British warships. So they're almost cut off. But alas, they do find safety. They have 2 casualties. They do capture a handful of British troops that they take back to the mainland. And shortly after that battle, that small contingent left on Bald Head Island abandons the Lower Cape Fear once and for all. abandoning Fort George for Mother Nature to wear away. And that is why we have no idea where Fort George is today. It was likely made of wood. Perhaps they had some earthen ramparts made as well, significantly smaller than Fort Holmes, the Civil War fort on Baldy Island, which does have remains today. But yes, folks, we have no idea where Fort George is. There is nothing left behind to show us where it could have been on Baldy Island. Due to the nature of this barrier island, it could be underwater. It could be lost to erosion like the Keeper's Cottage, the first at Old Baldy Lighthouse, or the Bald Head, the namesake, this sand dune or ridge line where we get that name Bald Head. Or just like the original lighthouse, the lighthouse that predates Old Baldy. Fort George, the British fort on Baldy Island, is lost to time. But what is not lost is the British button that officer dropped and left behind for archaeologists to uncover in the 1980s. And this is our proof, or that our evidence, that we know the 57th Regiment of Foot that came from Ireland to invade North Carolina in spring of 1776 did step foot here on Baldy Island. Now, the British Army would come back to Wilmington. They would eventually have some nominal success in capturing Wilmington in January of 1781, and they would maintain a base in Wilmington throughout the remainder of the war until peace was declared a year later in 1782. But we have no evidence in 1781 that they landed on Baldy Island again. It seems like they went directly up the Cape Fear River, bypassing Baldy Island, and landed in what is downtown Wilmington today. And there was a small fort built in downtown Wilmington. There's a marker along South 2nd Street that shows you where Major James Craig built a fort. I think it was the 82nd Regiment of Foot, but don't hold me to that. That built that small fort on a hillside overlooking the Cape Fear River in what is now downtown Wilmington today. So, folks, thanks for listening. Let me talk about my favorite piece in our collections. Now, remember, if you visit oldbaldy.org, you can take a look at this button and learn more about its history and its role in our collections. You can download some very detailed pictures of this button. So I realize the camera is not doing a very good job of focusing on the button. It's not doing a very good job focusing. But there are some really great photographs of this piece in our collections on our website, oldbaldy.org. We have digitized this part of our collections. Hey, Susan, amazing history. Well, thanks for listening, Susan. I think it's pretty amazing, too. Rhonda, learning a lot from your live videos. Thanks, Travis. Hey, Rhonda, it's really good to hear from you. I miss all you downtown folks. I hope that you are safe and healthy, Rhonda. Donna, yep, no, all right. So anybody else listening out there, we've had quite a few listeners this morning. Leave us a little comment there before I log off today. Let us know where you're listening from and what your connection is to Baldy Island. If y'all have any questions, let us know. We'll be happy to answer those questions or find an answer for you. We have some great things coming up. First of all, on April 8th, we're going to be having a virtual historic happy hour. We're going to be talking about the history and the legacy of the boathouse here on Baldy Island that was unfortunately lost due to the wind of Hurricane Florence in the fall of 2018. So from the comfort and safety of your own home, you can pull up one of your little fancy devices here with a camera, log into the system, and learn about some history from the perspective of the boathouse while we're all sipping on our cocktails or beverages of choice. I always say history goes down a lot smoother when you have a little hard liquor on the side. So we'd love to have you. If you go to our website, oldbaldy.org, you can find out information about that virtual historic happy hour and the application, the software we're going to be using to facilitate that virtual historic happy hour. If you subscribe to our monthly online newsletter, there is a code in that newsletter that you may use to have this virtual happy hour brought to you virtually free. Tickets for our happy hours are usually $15, but if you use that code, there'll be no charge to you. But of course, if you'd like to let a $15 donation, just be saying, hey, Mike, just be careful about what you say about the Brits. You never know who is listening. Well, first of all, Mike, I am proud to say that I am a proud loyalist. I can't stand the Whigs, I can't stand the Patriots, and all I get done doing in this area is defending the poor loyalists. And I'm not even kidding, folks. I volunteer at Tryon Palace, the Royal Governor's Palace up in New Bern usually, and I'm very, very much missing it. That is something that, of course, I had to stop doing during this pandemic, so it's one of the things I'm most looking forward to when all this mess gets back. I really want to go back up there and see that beautiful palace and talk about this beautiful history. So, Mike, do not worry. I'm the biggest defender of the British soldiers and the Royal Governors here in North Carolina. Funny comment, Mike. It's good to hear from you. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're healthy, Mike, and I'm sure you're missing North Carolina room and several other places we're used to going to. Rod, thanks, Travis. Thank you for sharing from South 2nd in Wilmington. Oh, hey, Rod. You must be a neighbor of mine then, Rod. Your name is not ringing a bell, so you must know where that plaque is. Yeah, in South 2nd. Right there, it's the intersection of South 2nd and Nunn Street is where that fort was. Big hillside there in downtown Wilmington. Anyway, I digress. We're going over time. That historic happy hour. Yeah, there's a code in our newsletter. You can join it for free. If you'd like to pay that $15, we very much appreciate your generosity. So we can continue this interpretive programming virtually as we're all self-isolating. Also, on our website, there is a new online store. Jess Woodard, who runs our retail operations here at the Old Baldy Foundation, has been working hard to bring a virtual store to you folks from the safety of your own home. There are some great items that she can get shipped to you. All those proceeds go back to the Old Baldy Foundation in order to preserve and to interpret North Carolina's oldest standing lighthouse. You can find these fancy shirts that I love wearing, these wonderful performance shirts. They have UV protection. They got some really cool things on the back. Let me just show you. Yeah, of course you can see it. These are awesome shirts. You can find them on the online store, our books, our puzzles, anything to keep you sane during this self-isolation. Remember, Easter's coming up. I got to put together an Easter basket for my goddaughter, so I'm going to be raiding our store and supporting this non-for-profit to send some things her way. So on that note, Phil was asking what's next. This afternoon, we're going to tour the grounds of the Old Baldy Lighthouse. Calling maybe for a thunderstorm this afternoon, so we're probably going to take some cover in the oil house in the base of Old Baldy Lighthouse. That's this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And then tomorrow we'll be back at 10 o'clock. Every day this week until Saturday, we'll be bringing you virtual programming at 10 o'clock here from the collections. And at 2 o'clock, we'll be bringing you a slice of Bald Head Island and sharing its history. So we'd love to have you join us. Of course, if you can't join us live, you can find these videos and all previous videos on our Facebook page, on our Instagram TV, or on YouTube. And if you go to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe for us. We can grow our social media presence. Barbara Grant always wondered about that oil house. Yeah, well, we have it interpreted now. So you can hear all the history, Barbara, this afternoon. I hope that was enough Scottish history for you today, Barbara. So on that note, folks, thanks for listening. We appreciate your support. We really hope that you and your family are safe and healthy. We thank all the first responders, all the medical personnel out there that are on the front lines to quell this pandemic. From the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate everything that you are doing and all the other personnel in the essential services during these crazy, crazy times. So stay tuned for some more content. We'll see you next time, folks. Thanks.